Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it here with us on NACTV. I'm Eoin Devereux with the Banner Press, welcoming you almost as always to this program, and joined almost as always as well this week by journalist Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, good to have you here this week.
Good to be here this week and good to be back in the office, that's for sure. I'm eager to get through this week's paper, very full.
That's right. It was a very good week in terms of a lot of interesting local information that we are very pleased to be able to share with you, not only on the pages of the newspaper, but right here on television on NACTV. Always best to start at the beginning, and that's where we're going to start this time in terms of the front page and this year's Santa Claus Parade put on by the Neepawa and District Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by that organization. It's always a great little celebration to get everyone into that Christmas spirit, that Christmas mood, just before the holiday really kicks into high gear. And we got a picture on there on the front page, as well as some additional pictures inside over on page 12 of this week's 20-page edition of the Banner Press. We also got to be very appreciative to Gianluigi Pito Photography. They were there as well. I was there myself getting pictures, but he is much better at taking pictures than I am. Mine usually are a little more blurry. Maybe they got a thumb in them. Maybe they're pointing towards the ground. I'm not the best photographer. I readily acknowledge that. But Gianluigi's done a great job. He covers so many different events. We're so appreciative that he is able to share his pictures on so many different events and festivities with us on a consistent basis. And that's what he's got on this week's edition of the Banner Press. Big old picture of Santa Claus on there. And it's really nice. I mean, not just the parade itself, Casper, because I was out there and it was a little longer than usual, but also the numbers, the number of people, number of families out there this year. It did feel like there were a few more out there that braced the cold than in previous years.
It seemed like it, yeah, just from the pictures there. And I mean, we did sort of have favorable weather for it. Like, obviously still cold, but you weren't freezing by any means. So I think that definitely helped as well, getting people out there, just a little bit more agreeable weather, so to speak. So very nice to see that people getting out there in numbers and enjoying this event.
If you weren't able to get out there for yourself, though, check your local listings for NACTV, because I did see representation from the television station out there with the video cameras, everything operational. So I'm sure they've got a wonderful little display of the parade and all the festivities that were a part of it. So always remember to check your local listings for NACTV, these types of updates. If you're unable to be out there and see it for yourself, you can see it at the comfort of your own home. Also on that exact same day, we had the Christmas wish sale that went on down at the Yellowhead Hall. This, for those of you that are not in Neepawa proper and maybe don't know the background or the history of it, it's an event where a bunch of craftsmen from all over the region come together. They go into the Yellowhead Hall, they set up for a day, and they sell their wares. And it's really a wonderful little event that's grown and developed over the last few years. There were a large number of interesting and varied, that's the best part, it was very different items of display and gift. And we've got a bunch of pictures in there of it. I went down there myself and I saw a bunch of different things. I got to admit, I didn't buy anything myself, but I was the exception. I was most definitely not the rule. Talking to some of the vendors that were down there, they said they didn't remember it being so consistently busy as it had been this year. And Casper, you said just before we went on air, going through the pictures, you said, yeah, it's you'd believe that. So
yeah, definitely. Like I had said before the show, like this always draws a pretty good crowd. But yeah, just looking at the photos, wow, very, very busy over there. And again, very glad to see that. It is a good event and lots of different stuff. Lots of different vendors show up there, and I mean, it's good to have these local options for different things, and seeing these people put their ideas and their items out there that they've worked so hard on. And I actually did get to have a little taste of that. My parents had gone out there to the sale themselves and picked up some fudge, and it was really, really good. So if you missed it this year, definitely be sure to drop by next year.
Most definitely. We're going to power right through that very quickly because there is just so much that we need to take a little bit of time and cover and talk a little bit about a background on this. This paper is jam-packed with a lot of notable information. One of the items we got to talk about right now, not quite as positive, not quite as fun to talk about as a Christmas parade or a Christmas wish sale. It's unfortunately something very serious, and you can find that story on page 2 of this week's edition. The vandalism and potential thefts of mail from the Neepawa post office. As you know, right now Canada Post is on strike. The individuals are looking for a change in terms of their wages. We're going to get into that in a few minutes with Ken Waddell's editorial. But in terms of that, they are on the picket line right now. They are on strike. But there was an incident that occurred about a week ago now, in and around Friday of last week, in which there was an individual that got into the post office, into the P.O. box area, which is open, is accessible to individuals at that time. And they ended up damaging and breaking into roughly 46 or 47 different post office boxes. I know that because on Monday, I went down there myself and I counted each and every one. It was about 46 if I had to be pinned down to an exact number. I'd say 46. I'm saying 47 maybe to be careful, maybe to be safe. It was a little under 50, but there were 46 or 47 that most definitely were damaged, broken into, and potentially had their mail taken. The interesting thing I found about this is that some of them that had been broken, when I went in there on Monday, the mail was still in there. Some envelopes were still in there. So that's why I say potential mail theft. RCMP are investigating at this time. They are going through, and I do have a little bit of information that they were able to share with me, as this is an ongoing investigation that they are looking into. And they take these types of things extremely seriously, and as well as they should. So, Casper, let me get your take on this. I mean, something like this, you don't usually think is going to happen in a smaller community like Neepawa. So what is your takeaway from that?
I mean, definitely, I mean, that's not to say that Neepawa hasn't had its own incidents. It certainly has, but you always hope that something like this won't happen in your community, regardless of how big or small it is. It's definitely very disappointing to see that this has happened, and I'll be honest, never came to mind to even think of the post office being hit in any sort of manner for any sort of a not agreeable activity, much less breaking into the mailboxes themselves. And it does feel perhaps extra. It's got a little bit of an extra punch to it, perhaps, with the strike going on right now, just because I know people are already concerned about mail, and then, of course, there's this compounding on top of it. So that's just really disappointing to see. And hopefully no mail has been stolen. I know that's a big concern. And, of course, along with that, you're going to be wondering, like, if my stuff did get taken, if there was anything in there, is there any sensitive information in there that should not be in the hands of whoever did this, and all that sort of stuff. And I can't even imagine what the workers might be thinking as well of this incident, disappointment, et cetera, et cetera. But hopefully it's all sorted out, and things will be a bit more secure going forward too.
Most definitely. And again, in the story, which you can find, as I said, on page 2 of this week's edition of the Banner Press, similar type of incidents. This isn't just a big city thing, and this isn't even just a fair-sized town type of thing. Communities such as Arden and Kelwood as well, over recent weeks, have reported similar unfortunate-like incidents. We're not saying that they're related. We cannot confirm at this time that they are in fact related, but it's unusual and it's unfortunate that this type of incident is occurring in rural Manitoba. We're going to try and keep on this as best we can. If there is any breaking news in regard to these investigations, we will try and keep you in the loop as best as possible. I'm going to shift over a little bit. Even though he is not on this week's show, I wanted to talk a little bit about Ken Waddell's editorial this week because it does touch on the Canada Post strike that is going on right now. Now, you know Ken. He is always very freewheeling and open with his opinion, whether you agree, whether you disagree as well. And many a time, some of you do definitely agree. There's a few as well that definitely don't agree, and we always appreciate when you let us know about that. That's what this is supposed to be. It's an interaction between ourselves and you, the reader. So in this week's edition, his editorial talks about Canada Post and the fact that he feels as though it's time to move on from Canada Post as a crown corporation, maybe sell it, move it along, turn it into privatization, that type of thing. I am very sure that is going to be you're going to have many an opinion on something like that. And the reason I wanted to put this into this program this week is because, well, I got a little bit of an opinion on that myself. You might not know it by looking at the tie, but I come from a union family. My father, my mother were union representatives through the 70s and the 80s. Being part of a union helped keep my family in a lot of ways clothed and sheltered and fed. And very appreciative of what unions were able to do for my family and those that I knew back in the day. Having said that, I was a representative and a member of unions in the 90s and into the early 2000s as well, at many different jobs over the years. So I have seen and I have dealt with myself the top-heavy mindset of unions that has sort of come over and the bureaucracy of unions that seems to have taken over. Much like a lot of things when you get to be about my age, you get that feeling of things were better back in the old days. And I feel that way to a degree with unions. Too many of them have come across as top-heavy now. Too many of them come across as not having the right mindset, looking out for the workers the way they used to. But, like I said, this is a seesaw sort of opinion I have on it. Having been raised in it, I see the value of it. I see the value of unions more than Ken does, you know. If you were to read anything into Ken's column, you'd probably see that he's not the biggest fan of unions. I think that's pretty, perhaps, Casper, yeah, that's self-evident. Those are self-evident facts, perhaps, maybe. Yeah.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah, but unions are a very important thing, especially this union. It's the CUPW, if I remember, across my head, because a little bit of a history lesson for you. It was the 1981 strike for the Union of Postal Workers that brought forward in Canada for the very first time extended maternity leave. The reason we have maternity leave for the most part in Canada is because of the 81 strike of the Postal Service. That's something they very strongly pushed for, and they were able to get through and get turned into a reality for their union representatives and all that. And that's something that many other unions throughout Canada over the next year or two follow behind on. So that's the power and that's the positivity of a union. Like I said, it's one of those things of you might not agree with me and you might not agree with Ken, but I most definitely hope that if you do have an opinion, this is one of those ones I hope you will reach out, whether you agree or disagree on this, and share your perspective on it. Because we would love to be able to hear that. We would love to be able to share that as well, in terms of a thumbs up, thumbs down in our paper, or a full letter. What do you think about the Canada Post strike? And again, no matter what happens, whether you agree with unions, whether you disagree with unions, hopefully you will have understanding for the union workers, those people on the ground, literally on the ground, walking the picket lines. They just want a fair, they're like us. They are us. They just want a fair slice. When you look in the media, and I'm going to quickly just read this information, what they're looking for is a 22% wage increase over the next 4 years. Now, when you hear that, you probably think 22%, that's outrageous, especially when the Canada Post is offering 11%. I just want to share this little bit of information for you. Between 2019, which I believe is the last time that they had any sort of work stoppage, and where we are right now, the devaluation of the dollar year over year has averaged 3.4%. That means your dollar right now, your loonie right now, is 3.4% less valuable than it was this exact same time last year. So you put that over an extended period, that is a 17.2% devaluation of postal workers' salary. So their salary as this moment right now is 17% less valuable than it was back in 2019. So the math, when you start mathing it, it sort of makes sense from their perspective. Like I said, I don't think they're going to get the 22. I think that's going to be a little tough, especially with a lot of the negativity the general public has right now towards the general operation and spending at Canada Post. Oh my God, there is a lot of wasteful spending at Canada Post. Don't get me wrong. I agree wholeheartedly that they need to make changes, full-scale changes. But from a worker's perspective, I can understand to a degree where they're coming from on this. And I hope that somehow they are able to mediate some sort of fair agreement and do it soon. Hopefully very soon. But like I said, I wanted to take about 5 minutes and just throw my opinion out there on this. And I hope that you have an opinion on your own. Let me throw it to you, Casper. Is there any sort of things you want to throw into this discussion?
Nothing too much in particular, no. I mean, I think you shared the most pertinent information, all that, but just sort of echoing your own statement there, I do hope that people will take a moment and, at the very least, and just sort of consider the worker perspective and the factors that are affecting them and what they're trying to get, because yeah, they are just trying to get a fair slice. I mean, it's been a while since they've had a pay increase, and I mean that isn't going to go far for very long. It probably doesn't go far right now either. And that, yeah, I hope that they can come to an agreement soon, one that's definitely favorable for the workers, because they definitely need that. And then, of course, so that they can get back to work. I mean, they have a lot of things that they're going to need to do once they get back in there. And I'm sure they're eager to get it all sorted and done and out the door and all that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, everyone in the general public, too, that are waiting on mail and eager to get that in their hands, too. So, yeah, hopefully an agreement will be settled upon very soon.
And again, to talk a little bit about Ken's column as well, talks about the potential privatization of Canada Post. I just want you to remember this part. Casper, this was well before your time, but back in 1996, I think we all may remember, if we're age appropriate here, the privatization of MTS right here in Manitoba. I remember a time when MTS was not a private company, and I remember a time afterwards. Well, you have to ask yourself on this. In terms of the privatization of MTS, do you think it was better before, or do you think it was better after? And that might help sort of sway your opinion in terms of whether you think Canada Post going down that exact same route is a positive or a negative. All right, let's get back into the news portion of it. Casper, you were able to get a couple interesting, intriguing features that you were able to share with us this week. This one is a story that we did talk about to a degree in a previous edition of the Banner Press, but you were able to delve a little bit deeper. You were able to get a little more meat on that bone, as it were, in terms of an event happening in Langford. And actually, I'll throw it to you, because I read it, and at the same time it was like I didn't quite understand it, but you can explain it to me.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually have to give thanks to Helen Drysdale for this. We had the press release in last week's paper. I believe it was I have the date there somewhere, November 22nd, exactly. So yeah, last week's paper. And she actually happened to know the person. This is in regards to a bunch of land, 178 hectares, which I don't know what that is aside from it's massive, of land called the Langford Escarpment, being donated to Nature Conservancy of Canada, a portion of it at least, and then the rest was bought up by the organization. And that was all donated and given to Nature Conservancy of Canada by Judith Harper. Helen put me in touch with Judith there, and I was able to talk to her and get more of her personal perspective on it, because the press release doesn't go into it too much. And it was a very good story to hear. I mean, I'm always glad and honored, really, to be able to talk with people on things like this and share their stories and their memories. So that's what I go into this week with this story. She went into a bit of her family history, some memories that she had growing up there, because her parents homesteaded on the Langford Escarpment, and her parents before that, and so on and so forth. Very long history there. And so I go into that, and I mean, it was just really interesting to hear. And it's a very beautiful country too. Was able to get a bunch of different family photos as well. And just sort of the peace of mind it brought Judith to know that this massive piece of land is going to be preserved as it is for years to come, because it is a very gorgeous land, of course, but it's also very important. I mean, Judith and her family, they're very close to nature, being farmers and all of that, and just living on that massive section there. And so conservancy and all of that is very important to her and to her family. And yeah, so just going into all those details, and definitely be sure to give it a read. I mean, I don't want to share too much there, because I think it really does it better justice if you're able to go into the story as blind as possible and just get a feel for it from Judith's comments.
What I thought was very nice about it, Casper, was that in terms of last week was the press release, and press releases for the most part can be a little bit dry. This added a little bit of heart. This added a little bit of feeling behind the press release. It paints the picture so much better than a simple statement can. So that's why we definitely hope you'll take a minute or two and check it out for yourself in this week's edition of the paper. Getting into an entertainment portion of our newspaper this week. A very exciting event set for the Roxy Theatre coming up next week. And it involves middle school, Neepawa Middle School, and NACI. But Casper, it also involves a very special guest.
It sure does. As Eoin said, this event is coming up next week, actually on December 4th to be exact, so very early. And again, Neepawa Middle School bands and Neepawa Area Collegiate Institute bands are coming together for this event. They're hosting a band booster concert. And the special guest is coming from out of town for this. It's actually the Brandon University Brass Ensemble, which I'd not heard of before, but quite something, apparently. I mean, I was told about it quite a bit from Colleen there, who is a teacher at the Neepawa schools. And the person directing the Brandon University Ensemble is someone that I wasn't familiar with prior to this as well, but Dr. Edward Bach, who, as I was looking into all these notes and everything, has a very sort of prolific career and has been across all sort of different countries, the major stages and everything. So I think you can expect something quite special going to this concert. And on top of that as well, I mean, with the specialty entertainment, there's, of course, the factor of This is a fundraiser concert for the Neepawa Band program, so it's going to help alleviate some student costs there. So it's kind of a two-in-one thing there. You get to go out and have a fun musical evening and support the students too in Neepawa.
That is really nice, and we should take advantage whenever we get an opportunity for an organization, a band, whatever like this, like BU coming into our town. We should support it as best we can. All right, we only got a few minutes left, so we're going to very quickly just go through a couple other items that we hope you're going to take a little bit of time and look into the pages of the Banner Press and learn a little bit about. Around this time last week, I headed down to the Neepawa Gladstone Co-op grocery store because there's a very special partnership that is now in effect between High Life and the Neepawa Gladstone Co-op in terms of the sale of some of their really premium pork products. High Life, for the most part, does international. That's their main global focus. Places like Mexico, places like Korea, places like Japan are their primary markets. For the most part, they were not domestic, but that has changed in recent years. Back in 2022, they formed a partnership with Freshmart in terms of selling some of their products. And now, effective immediately, they have had that same partnership put into place with our own co-op. So they're going to be able to sell products at the grocery store here in Neepawa and down the road in Gladstone. So if you're into pork products, that's going to be huge. Myself, I was down there, and they had these little tasting. They had the executive chefs out there preparing it. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not big on pig. I am not a huge fan of pork for the most part. Please do not... If anyone from High Life watching this, please don't cancel the Banner Press. This is my opinion on this. I worked for a company in the 90s. I'm not going to say who. It was most definitely not High Life. But I worked for a pork-related company in the area in the 90s. And I saw some of the stuff they were doing. And that put me off pork for the longest period of time. Having said that, though, the executive chefs made up these little pork ribs and little things there. And oh my God, Casper, they were just so friggin' good. Like I said, I'm not a fan of pork. It's never usually my first choice, but those things were just so unbelievably good. I talked them up to a bunch of people. And for me to do that, it was like, oh wow, that must have been all right.
Yeah. Like, again, for Eoin to do that, that is a glowing compliment. That is like the highest you can receive there on that. And I mean, like, High Life also has some pretty expert chefs there too. And they've been out to different events and catered for that. And always wonderful reviews on that. So it's pretty exciting having their product here. And then, of course, showcased at the event as well. And being able to taste it on location too. So that's pretty something.
That's right. All right, we're very quickly going to go on to another local product that is well regarded, not just here in Neepawa, but throughout Manitoba and Canada. Farmery Estate Brewery has got this new showcase for many artists from across Manitoba. Their Northern Lights Lager has these beautiful photographers' pictures on there, displaying the Northern Lights in their tremendous grandeur. One of those is from Neepawa. Jody Baker, you've probably seen her work all over. She's a tremendous photographer, amazing eye, and she's one of the four that's going to be a part of it. They're going to be featured at beer and alcohol stores throughout Manitoba and portions of northwestern Ontario, and I think into Saskatchewan as well. And they're going to be having an exhibit in the fall right here in Neepawa for all four of those artists. So you're going to have to keep an eye out for that. We're going to have further information on that in the near future. And you can find the story. It's on page 20 of this week's edition. We wish we could go in even further, but there's only so much time that we're able to sort of delve into it. That's why it's always important for you to pick up a copy of the Banner Press in 30 different communities throughout Western Manitoba. If you're not able to, you can always find it online at mywestman.ca. Once again, mywestman.ca. And again, if you have any story suggestions for us, it is always greatly appreciated. You can get in touch with us at 476-3401 or at news@neepawabanner.com. Once again, news@neepawabanner.com. So that's about it for this week. Casper, thank you as always.
Thank you again for having me here and for joining us.
That's right. Thank you for tuning in each and every week to the story behind the stories. Have a fantastic weekend.